recently a friend of mine was asking, like, what level should we let ourselves feel our emotions? Because modern self-help is always telling us to process and focus on emotion, let it sweep over us, listen to it, listen to our gut, listen to what it tells us. It's the more intelligent part of us. And I think that's true to some extent. Like, you should not ignore these things. They are important signals. They can help you. You shouldn't just tuck them away in a little box inside yourself and let that pressure build. You obviously shouldn't do that. But when I read not just self-help, but just the writings of ancient people, people that lived in a time where a fourth of the children were going to die in childbirth, where you weren't going to live past 50, where if you got a toothache, you'd have to get your tooth ripped out, and just the most horrible stuff all the time, working and living in a little hut, having to just work by candlelight, just so little comfort, for so much of history, so little comfort, so much tragedy. How did those people deal with it? Because they weren't physiologically different than us, were they? They had the same capacity for emotion. And yet you read things they write with such matter-of-factness. Like a World War I letter I read will be saw 20 men die today. I hope you are well. And there's that famous meme of an ancient Greek person saying I once ate a strawberry and once a pear. 'Twas a good life. Their standard for comfort was so low that they could gain satisfaction from just not being dead, basically. Whereas us modern humans feel like we need a perfect job, a perfect partner, a perfect everything to feel okay, to feel happy, to feel fulfilled. And here's the problem is, in that way, we're so sensitized to our own emotions. Every single one cuts through us like a cold wind. It's like we're out in the cold with no jacket, with no layers between us and our emotions. And I definitely feel like I'm more than average sensitive, especially for a guy. So as a kid, small things would really upset me. And as an adult, I've had to learn to deal with that and really learn that, okay, I let small things set me off. I need to put those in context. But what's good is that it's taught me that emotions are so fickle, and that if I was dropped in, any time before 1920, I would not be able to handle it, because back then, what am I doing but working every day, dealing with this illness, that illness, worrying that I might lose my job and lose everything. Life was just so much more difficult. And so I wonder, what did those people do to deal with all that? And what I've seen from reading everything from Shakespeare to the Roman Stoics to Teddy Roosevelt to just anything before 1920, before the world got easy, at least in the modern, Western world. Before the world got easy, it seems what people did was really, and it might sound shallow, what they did was either joke or simply grit their teeth and move on and not listen to that inner voice. They would actually brand that inner voice, that emotional roller coaster that we so worship. They would brand that as almost demonic possession, especially the farther back you go. If someone was depressed, they'd call it a demonic kind of possession, an evil spirit that had moved into the body. If someone got super angry, same thing. And in a sense, they wouldn't even blame that person quite as much as we do, especially in early hunter-gatherer societies. If someone flew into a rage and just acted completely outside how they normally acted, they'd forgive that person because they'd say, well, that's not him. That was the demon. That was this other thing that takes hold of you and you can't control, and you're not that responsible for what you do when you're flying into a rage like that. Which, that has its own problems, if you're trying to create a justice system, but it is very good for separating yourself from that emotion and not letting it rule you. If you understand that that feeling of cowardice before doing something new is just kind of a little spirit from your unconscious that's just trying to get its way. But if you don't want to get its way, there's no reason to worship it, to listen to it, to focus on it. There's no reason to just spend all your attention on that emotional roller coaster and letting it take you up and down, up and down. Because at the core of it, you have a life to lead, and there's not that much range of what you know that you should do. What I mean by that is, say, let's compare life to a fight, right? And so what does a fighter do before a fight? They remember to focus on no extreme negative self-talk, reasonable preparation, like cardio, running, fight practice, visualization, positive thinking, being ready to take the bad and just move past it. You know, it's very simple. And so I think ancient people understood that there was nothing to do but that. To take the pain, move past it. Take the pain, move past it. Look at it for a little bit, let yourself grieve for a bit, but there's really no other option, right? Besides moving past it and like committing suicide or just laying in bed till you die. Like, that sounds so extreme, but that's the core of it. Like, human beings only have two options. Move past it, move past the emotion, keep going, or die. That's it. Binary decision, binary choice. And I think that was the bedrock of everything that like they thought about when dealing with something horrible. They also had the additional one of being really religious, of saying, God wants me to move on. God does not like people to just sit and do nothing. God does not like people to commit suicide. God likes you to just, all right, you had a kid, you miscarried, or you lost your job, or like your fields ran fallow and now you're in a famine. Like, all you can do is take it on the chin and move on, much like in a fight. There's simply no other options. And that's the problem, is we modern people, we feel like we have options. And I think in a bad way, like if something bad happens to us, we can think about, well, maybe I should quit my job. Maybe I should go to therapy. Maybe I should travel to a different country. Maybe I should go talk to my friends. Maybe I should change myself. Maybe I need a new personality. Maybe I need to read a self-help book. Maybe I need to do this. Maybe I need to do that. We feel like we have so many options, and so every emotion can eat away at us and make us think there's some big change we need to make. There's some huge different thing that we should be doing. Rather than ancient people who, it didn't matter if you lost your children. It didn't matter if there was a war. It didn't matter. You just had to keep going. You weren't going to move. You weren't going to get a therapist. You had no choices, which in a way made the choice very simple. Now, I'm not saying that was better, right? I'm not saying that was so much better. I'm saying that way of thinking might help you simplify your relationship to your emotions and not put them on a pedestal, not make them be the basis of your every decision, not make you like change directions with the course of every single new emotion you get, because you think you can do that. We think as modern people we have that privilege of like, oh, I feel sad, now I should do this. But you don't. If you change directions all the time like that, you will never get anywhere. You'll be lost, you'll be directionless. You'll be one of these people, and I'm sure you know many of them, you might be one, I certainly have been, that never can like move in one direction. And so as they grow older, they don't get anywhere, because every emotion buffets them about like a ship on the ocean, just going this way and going that way. They cannot find a path and just take it, because they're redirecting all the time, because they think it's their privilege as modern people to do that. And it's worse, right? The more modern you are. Like if you have rich parents, you're a trust fund kid, then you're super like this. You think you have every privilege to change courses and change directions based on every emotion. And if you're more like a medieval person or an ancient hunter-gatherer where like there are more demands on you, well then you learn to just move past these things because you have to. So, in conclusion, balance your intake of modern self-help and that sort of modern worship of emotions with things from ancient people, from people who dealt with tragedy after tragedy and yet moved on and got past it and progressed the world to where it is now. We have a lot to learn from those people. We should respect them. That's all.